Are you ready to learn the truth about what was hidden behind the facades of the most luxurious mansions that we admire to this day? We are used to seeing the age of splendor as a time of incredible balls, rustling silks, and gallant gentlemen offering their arms to ladies in carriages. But if we take a closer look at these magnificent houses and peer into the windows of the upper floors, we see a very different picture, far removed from romantic novels. There, in the silence of luxurious bedrooms, real tragedies unfolded, which it was not customary to even whisper about. Gold and velvet often became the backdrop for a life full of loneliness, coldness, and endless emotional pressure. The women whose portraits adorned the galleries often felt not like the mistresses of their own lives, but like expensive dolls in perfectly furnished display cases. Their fates were predetermined, their desires suppressed, and their voices muffled by heavy curtains and strict rules of etiquette. Watch the video to the end to find out how an impeccable reputation and wealth became the most reliable and ruthless prison for women. What if I told you that everything you believed about the romance of centuries past was untrue? For a young woman from high society, entering adulthood did not begin with dreams of love, but with the harsh realization of her role as a commodity. The ball season, which we see in movies as a time of fun and flirtation, was in fact a tightly organized marketplace. Mothers and aunts, like experienced managers, assessed the chances of a young debutante, weighing her beauty against the size of her dowry. The girl herself often remained a silent figure in this process, whose opinion was of least interest to the family. She was taught that a successful marriage was the sole purpose of her existence, the pinnacle to which she must strive at any cost. Preparing for her first appearance in a society was like preparing for a military campaign, where every detail of her wardrobe was of strategic importance. Dresses were not sewn for comfort, but to demonstrate the family's status, turning the young girl into a showcase for her father's capital. Any mistake in behavior, an awkward gesture, or a too bold glance could instantly lower her market value. The fear of remaining an old maid was so great that many agreed to the first decent offer just to avoid shame. Men choosing wives looked at them as they would thoroughbred horses or promising stocks. They were not looking for a kindred spirit, but a worthy decoration for their living room and a reliable vessel for continuing the family line. Feelings were considered a pleasant but completely unnecessary bonus to a profitable union of capital and titles. Contracts were drawn up by lawyers with the same care with which corporate mergers are formalized today. On the wedding day, when the bride walked down the aisle in a cloud of lace, society saw a triumph, but she herself often felt only icy horror. She passed from her father's authority to her husband's, often barely knowing the man with whom she was to spend the rest of her life. The luxurious gifts showered on the bride were essentially payment for her freedom and renunciation of her own will. From that moment on, her personality dissolved into the status of wife, and she became part of the interior of a wealthy home. The honeymoon rarely brought relief, more often becoming the first stage of deep disappointment and alienation. The young wife quickly realized that her ideas of family happiness were shattered by the deaf wall of male indifference. She had to learn to hide her true feelings behind a polite smile and impeccable manners. Thus began life in a golden cage, where the bars were made of public opinion and financial obligations. The woman understood that she had no right to make mistakes, no right to complain, and in fact, no right to herself. Her fate was sealed with the wax seal of a marriage contract, and the keys to this dungeon were safely hidden in her husband's coat pocket. I'm very interested to hear your point of view. What do you think about such pragmatism in matters of marriage? Was there anything reasonable about it? Write about it in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new stories. Are you ready to learn the truth about how the layout of a house killed feelings? We often admire huge Victorian mansions, but rarely think about the fact that their architecture was specifically designed to separate people. The house was designed so that each family member had their own isolated area, and interactions were strictly regulated. The men's half of the house, with its study, billiard room, and smoking room, was a closed club where women were not allowed. The women's quarters, the boudoir, morning room, and bedroom, became a world enclosed within four walls. Even the master bedrooms in wealthy homes were often separate or connected only by a door that was locked most of the time. This physical separation of space inevitably led to emotional distance between spouses. Husband and wife could go days without seeing each other, meeting only at formal dinners in the presence of servants. Their communication was reduced to exchanging polite phrases about the weather, plans for the season, or household expenses. Sincerity and warmth disappeared, giving way to cold etiquette, which replaced living human relationships. Huge corridors, high ceilings, and enfilades of rooms created a feeling of emptiness and insignificance. A woman could wander around her luxurious home for hours without meeting a single living soul except for the silent servants. The echo of her footsteps on the parquet floor reminded her of how lonely she was in this huge, richly decorated space. The furniture arranged along the walls, the heavy curtains that blocked out the light, the massive carpets, all of this absorbed sound and life. The interiors were designed to impress guests, not to be comfortable to live in. In rooms like these, it was difficult to breathe deeply, difficult to laugh, difficult to be yourself. In winter, these huge mansions were often cold, despite the fireplaces, which only heated the space around them. Women wrapped themselves in shawls, sitting in their boudoirs, and this physical cold penetrated their very souls. Cold sheets, cold walls, cold glances. All this became a familiar backdrop to everyday life. The doors in such houses were heavy and always tightly closed, guarding the secrets of each room. Knocking on the door was a mandatory ritual, even between close people, creating yet another barrier. Personal space was so strictly guarded that it turned into a solitary confinement cell. Even the staircases were separated, the front staircase for the masters and the back staircase for the servants, so that the worlds would not intersect unnecessarily. A woman climbing the wide marble staircase to her bedroom felt like an actress leaving the stage for the wings. There was no room for spontaneity in this architecture, for casual hugs or heartfelt conversations in the kitchen. The house dictated a lifestyle in which distance was considered a sign of nobility and good breeding. And in this distance, any hope for closeness and understanding slowly but surely died. Do you think such walls could retain even a drop of warmth? In the next chapter, you will learn what terrible secret was hidden in the most fashionable dresses of that era. Want to know a secret that will change your perception of fashion in the past? The desire to be beautiful and fashionable in the Victorian era was not just an expensive pleasure, but sometimes a deadly risk. One of the most popular shades of the time was a deep, rich emerald green that looked so striking under gaslighting. Women who wanted to shine at balls ordered dresses in this fashionable shade, unaware of the terrible price they were paying. The dye used to create this color contained huge doses of arsenic. By wearing such a dress, a woman literally wrapped herself in a poisonous cocoon that slowly poisoned her body. With every movement, with every rustle of the skirt, microscopic particles of poison rose into the air, which were inhaled by both the lady herself and those around her. Body moisture, sweat, and heat made the process of absorbing poison through the skin even more intense and destructive. After the ball, a woman might feel weak, have a headache, or feel nauseous, but she would attribute it to fatigue or a tight corset. The doctors who treated these ladies often could not understand the cause of their mysterious ailments and pallor. But the danger lurked not only in green dresses, but also in the cosmetics used to hide signs of fatigue. Face powder often contained lead, which destroyed the skin and poisoned the body from within, accumulating over the years. Eye drops that dilated the pupils to create a languid gaze were made from belladonna, a poisonous plant. Women willingly applied poison to themselves because the fear of appearing unattractive or old-fashioned was stronger than the fear for their health. Society demanded that they look perfect and radiant, and no one asked what price this came at. It was a time when beauty truly required sacrifice, and sacrifice in the most literal, physical sense. Even hair accessories, artificial flowers and veils could be soaked in dangerous chemicals to preserve their shape and color. The bedroom where a lady prepared to go out turned into a slow-acting chemical laboratory. Symptoms of chronic poisoning, irritability, apathy, hair loss, only exacerbated the reckless's depressive state. Women saw their beauty fading and in a panic used even more products, closing the deadly circle. It was a quiet, invisible tragedy unfolding before mirrors and gilded frames. Women faded away, becoming transparent and fragile, which ironically was considered a sign of aristocratic refinement. Fashion was a ruthless dictator that did not forgive weakness and demanded complete submission to its canons. And women deprived of other means of self-expression laid their lives on the altar of this cruel deity. Like this story about deadly fashion, if it struck a chord with you. What if I showed you a time machine that would transport us to the dressing room of that era? In the 19th century, the corset was not just an item of underwear, but a powerful tool for social and physical control over women. Girls were accustomed to wearing them from early adolescence, shaping not only their figures, but also their psychology of submission. Tight lacing literally prevented them from breathing deeply, limiting the flow of oxygen to the brain. This state of constant mild hypoxia made women physically weak, prone to fainting and passivity. Society romanticized this weakness, calling it femininity and ethereal fragility, although in reality it was an artificially created disability. A woman in a corset could not make sudden movements, could not walk quickly, could not shout loudly. She became dependent on the help of those around her, as even picking up a fallen handkerchief was a difficult physical task for her. The stiff whalebone dug into her ribs, deforming her internal organs and turning every day into a test of endurance. The corset could only be removed in the deep privacy of the bedroom, and this moment became the only breath of freedom. But even when alone, many women continued to wear lighter versions of corsets, fearing that their bodies would lose their shape. The thought of appearing before their husbands or even servants without this armor seemed the height of impropriety. The corset was a kind of armor that protected them from the outside world, but at the same time crushed their souls. It dictated posture, a straight back, restrained gestures, the inability to relax for a second. This constant physical tension grew into emotional tension, into a perpetual anxiety about being imperfect. Women felt shackled in chains that were covered with silk and lace, but that did not make them any softer. Doctors of the time, who were men, often approved of wearing corsets, believing that the female body was too weak on its own and needed support. This reinforced the myth of the natural inferiority of women, who needed an external frame to stand upright. Any attempt to abandon the corset was perceived as rebellion, a sign of promiscuity and moral decline. A free body was synonymous with a fallen woman, and this stereotype was hammered into the minds of every lady. Thus, fashion served as the perfect jailer, always with you, right on your body. And the most frightening thing was that women tightened each other's laces, supporting this system with their own hands. Do you agree that clothing can affect our self-esteem and freedom? In the next chapter, you will learn how doctors treated female melancholy, turning it into madness. Victorian medicine often became another tool for oppressing women rather than bringing healing. Any expression of discontent, sadness, fatigue, or desire to do something more than embroidery was labeled hysteria. This convenient diagnosis allowed all of a woman's emotional impulses to be attributed to uterine disease or shaky nerves. Husbands, tired of their wives' complaints or excessive emotionality, called in expensive doctors who, with a knowing look, prescribed rest. Treatment by rest was a popular practice that essentially amounted to sensory deprivation and isolation. Women were locked in their bedrooms and forbidden to read, write, draw, or even engage in long conversations. She was instructed to lie in bed for hours, staring at the ceiling or the pattern on the wallpaper, and drink heavy cream to regain her strength. It was believed that any intellectual activity drained energy from the reproductive organs and was harmful to women's health. Such treatment often led to completely mentally healthy women actually going mad. The lack of excitement, activity, and communication plunged patients into deep depression, which doctors interpreted as the progression of the disease. It was a vicious cycle. The more a woman was treated, the worse she became, and the stricter the regime became. She began to doubt her own adequacy, believing the authoritative opinion of men in white coats. The only way to avoid this imprisonment was complete submission and demonstration of calm, feminine behavior. Women learned to hide their intelligence, their ambitions, and their tears, just so as not to be suspected of having a nervous disorder. The pharmaceutical industry of the time offered its own solutions. Laudanum and various opium tinctures were sold freely and prescribed for everything. These remedies dulled the pain of existence, making women submissive, sleepy, and convenient for those around them. Many ladies lived for years in a semi-narcotic haze that helped them endure the emptiness of their days. It was a time when the female soul was not seen as something complex and profound, but was reduced to a set of physiological reactions. Women's suffering was devalued, their voices ignored, and their personalities erased under the influence of sedatives. The bedroom, which was supposed to be a place of rest, was turned into a velvet-lined ward for the mentally ill. And the most tragic thing was that women understood that there was no way out of this state except to completely give up on themselves. Thus, medicine, which was supposed to save, became an accomplice in the destruction of women's lives. Guess how long it took to create the perfect boredom? An aristocrat's day was scheduled down to the minute, but that schedule was filled with completely meaningless activities. A woman's main task was to be present, and look, not to do or create. Endless changes of clothes, morning dress, walking dress, tea dress, dinner dress, ball gown, took up a huge part of her time. Each change of clothes required the help of a maid and took a considerable amount of time, turning the day into a series of fittings. Between changes of clothes, it was necessary to write letters, often formal and empty, responding to invitations or expressing gratitude. Courtesy visits were another duty. It was necessary to drive around a list of addresses, leave a calling card, sometimes without even getting out of the carriage. Reading serious books was not encouraged. Only light novels or fashion magazines with pictures were considered acceptable. Music or painting were allowed only as a pleasant hobby, entertainment for guests, but not as a serious art form. Women were forbidden to show professionalism in anything. Their lot was amateurism. She had no right to manage the family's financial affairs, run the estate, or make important decisions. Her sphere of influence was limited to choosing the dinner menu and seating guests at the table. Even the upbringing of her own children was often entrusted to hired nannies and governesses, leaving the mother with the role of a beautiful symbol. Such a life, devoid of creative work and responsibility, was incredibly tedious precisely because of its idleness. The feeling of her own uselessness gnawed at her soul more than hard physical labor. A woman understood that she was just a decorative element that could easily be replaced. Conversations in the drawing rooms were about trivialities. Any sharp or philosophical topics were considered bad form in women's society. Intellectual hunger was a constant companion of many intelligent women of that time, forced to hide their minds. They filled the void by collecting porcelain, embroidering endless napkins, or caring for lapdogs. It was an imitation of vigorous activity designed to hide the vacuum inside. Evenings were spent in agonizing anticipation of finally being able to go home and take off the mask of well-being. And so it went, day after day, year after year, until life turned into a gray, monotonous ribbon. Which do you think is more difficult, hard work or absolute idleness? In the next chapter, we will talk about people who saw everything but were forced to remain silent. Life in a wealthy house meant a complete lack of privacy, despite the abundance of rooms and doors. Servants were omnipresent and invisible witnesses to every minute of their master's lives, especially the mistress. The maid knew more about her mistress than her husband, mother, or best friend. She saw her tears, knew about her illnesses, overheard snippets of conversation, and found hidden letters. A woman was never truly alone. She was always under the scrutiny of strangers' eyes. This created an atmosphere of constant tension. One had to keep up appearances even in front of one's own chambermaid. Servants were part of the social control system. Gossip from the servants' quarters quickly spread throughout the neighborhood, reaching the ears of other families. The reputation of the house depended on the silence of the servants, and this made the owners, in a sense, hostages to their staff. The mistress had to be a paragon of virtue 24 hours a day, giving no cause for gossip. Relationships with servants were a complex dance of hierarchy and dependence. On the one hand, the mistress gave orders, but on the other, she was helpless in her daily life without the help of servants. She did not know how to dress, comb her hair, or make herself a cup of tea. This learned helplessness tied her even more tightly to the house and the established order. Any attempt to show independence was met with surprise and condemnation as a violation of centuries-old traditions. The servants also guarded the boundaries between the male and female halves of the house, reporting on visits and movements. They were the living surveillance cameras of that era, from which it was impossible to hide. Sometimes a strange, unequal friendship developed between the mistress and the maid, based on their shared seclusion, but this friendship always had boundaries that could not be crossed. The fear of what the servants will say often prevented women from taking decisive action or showing their emotions. They lived with an eye on those who served them dinner and made their beds. The house became an aquarium where every movement of the fish was visible to everyone who approached the glass. And in this aquarium, the water was often murky with intrigue and unspoken words. Being a lady meant not only power, but also total lack of freedom from the eyes and ears of others. The worst nightmare for women in the Victorian era and the Gilded Age was the word scandal. Society at that time was merciless to those who broke its unwritten rules and laws. Losing one's reputation was tantamount to social death, which was worse than physical death. Divorce was considered unthinkable, dirty, and shameful, a stigma that fell on the entire family. Even if her husband was a tyrant, a gambler, or openly unfaithful, a wife was obliged to endure and remain silent. The law was entirely on the side of men. In a divorce, a woman often lost her rights to her children and property. She could end up on the street without any means of support, rejected by friends and relatives. The doors of the houses where she had previously been welcomed with honor were closed to her forever. Therefore, women endured humiliation for years just to maintain the appearance of well-being. The fear of being excluded from society forced them to forgive betrayals and turn a blind eye to their husbands' double lives. They became accomplices in hypocrisy, maintaining the illusion of a perfect family in public. Any misstep, a careless letter, a private meeting, an overly daring outfit could be a reason for ruin. Women lived in a state of constant self-censorship, weighing every word and gesture. Public opinion was judge, jury, and executioner all rolled into one, and it was impossible to appeal its verdict. What will people say? This question was the main guideline in life. The isolation of a rejected woman was total. People stopped greeting her. Her name was crossed off guest lists. She became invisible, a ghost that everyone diligently ignored. This sword of Damocles hung over every woman's head, forcing them to be submissive and compliant. The price of freedom was too high, and few dared to pay it. Women clung to their status as if it were a lifeline, even if that lifeline was dragging them to the bottom. Wealth did not protect them from condemnation. On the contrary, it drew even more attention to the family's life. When the lights went out in the ballrooms and the last guest left, the hardest time began, the time of silence. The woman remained alone in her luxurious bedroom, removing the jewels that seemed like shackles to her. In the mirror, she saw the tired face of a person living someone else's life. The night hours were a time when the mask fell away and suppressed pain burst forth. Her tears were absorbed by the lace pillows, silent witnesses to her despair. She cried for her unfulfilled dreams, for the love that never happened, for the children who had grown up strangers to her. She cried from the powerlessness to change anything, from the fear of a future that promised only decline. These nighttime hysterics were the only way to release her emotions, a safe outlet. In the morning, she had to be flawless again, calm and cold as a marble statue. Traces of tears were carefully hidden with powder and a veil. No one was to guess that a black hole gaped in the heart of the mistress of this magnificent house. Her husband, sleeping in the next room or not coming home at all, did not hear and did not want to hear these sounds. Loneliness in marriage felt more acute than the loneliness of a hermit. Being close to someone, yet infinitely distant, was a special kind of torture. Many women began to keep secret diaries, confiding to paper what they could not say to a living soul. Today, these writings reveal to us the depth of their tragedy, hidden behind the dry facts of history. It was a world where feelings were considered a weakness and sincerity a lack of education. And in this quiet war with herself, a woman almost always lost, slowly burning out from within. Over the years, beauty faded, and women lost their main value in the eyes of society and their husbands. They moved into the category of elderly ladies, whose role was reduced to observing the lives of others. Men's attention shifted to young debutantes, and aging wives became objects of furniture. All that remained for her was to strictly observe traditions, becoming the very strict matron she once feared. She turned into the guardian of the rules that had broken her own life, imposing them on the next generation. It was a bitter irony. The victim became the jailer of others. Power over her grandchildren or daughters-in-law became a surrogate for the power over her own destiny that she never had. The days dragged on slowly, filled with memories of a past that may not have been so happy, but seemed so. She sat by the window, watching the world change, yet remaining as closed off to her as ever. Loneliness in old age became absolute. Husbands often died early or lived their lives to the end. Children were busy with their own affairs, their own ambitions, and their own unhappy marriages. The woman was left alone in a huge empty house, filled with things but not with life. The luxury that surrounded her now seemed meaningless and cold. She understood that life had passed her by while she observed propriety and feared condemnation. It was a time for taking stock, and the results were often disappointing. But even then, she kept her back straight, as her corset had taught her, not allowing herself to relax. Dignity was the only thing she had left, and she carried it like a banner. Departing from life was often as quiet and inconspicuous as life itself. History forgot their names, leaving only portraits of beautiful ladies in antique frames. We saw that behind the glitter of gold and silk lay destinies full of drama and quiet pain. These women lived in a world that gave them everything except the most important thing: the right to be themselves and the right to happiness. Their bedrooms were not boudoirs of love, but solitary confinement cells where hopes and dreams faded away. The story of the golden cages teaches us that no amount of comfort can replace human warmth and freedom of choice. What other secrets of the past would you like to uncover with us? Write your suggestions in the comments, and we will definitely make a video about it. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new journeys into the depths of history.